Hello po, good evening. So, 8:05 na po. Ready na po ba? Ang lahat. Type 1 na lang po kung ready na. Ayan, so mukhang ready na po ang lahat. So, tatlo daw po yung lesson natin na i-discuss tonight. Una, past 19, past 20, and past 23. So, we'll start at past 19, entitled Employee Benefits. So, ang definition po ng employee benefits is yung mga rewards na ibinibigay or yung incentive na ibinibigay sa employee na labas po sa kanilang salaries and wages kapalit po ng mga services nila. Halimbawa, meron po kayong employee of the month. So, siya yung may pinakitang exemplary performance among all of your employees. So, kapag magbibigay ka po ng reward or incentive, yun po yung tinatawag na employee benefits. So, sa recognition po of employee benefits, so nire-recognize po siya as expense po, no? And kapag po tapos na yung accounting period, wait lang. Kapag hindi pa po nababayaran yung employee benefits pero na-earn nyo na po yung service ng employee, i-record po siya as liability. So, meron po tayong 4 categories ng employee benefits. Pakatandaan po itong acronym na SPOT. Meaning po ng SPOT is short-term employee benefits. Yung P po, post-employment benefits. Yung O, other long-term employment benefits. Yung T, termination benefits. So, i-discuss po natin yan later, isa-isa. So, yung mga employee benefits daw po na hindi kasama sa past 19 ay yung employee benefits na nasa scope daw po ng PFRS2 and yung mga benefit plans po under PAS 26. So, hindi na po tayo magdudwell dyan. So, first, short-term employee benefits. So, pag sinabi pong short-term employee benefits, ito po yung mga benefits na due to be settled within 12 months. Ibig sabihin, hindi po siya lalagpas ng 1 year bago ma-settle. So, ano-ano po ba yung mga kasama sa short-term na benefits? Yung una po ay salaries, wages, and statutory contributions. So, sabihin ko lang po kung ano po yung pag nagkaiba ng salaries and wages. Ang sabi po ni Sir sa video lesson niya is, yung salaries po, meron po siyang fixed na amount. Halimbawa, minimum wage. Sa isang buwan, meron ka pong 20,000 po. So, kapag sa January, sumahod ka po ng 20,000, sa February, 20,000 lang din po. Meanwhile, yung wages, ito po yung paiba-iba po yung amount nila. For example, kasi naka-base kayo sa profit sharing. Kung January sumahod ka ng 20,000, sa February hindi po sure na 20,000 yung sasahurin niyo. It's either 21, 22, or 22,000. And yung statutory contributions po, dito na po pumapasok yung PhilHealth, SSS, at kung ano-ano pa po. So next, short-term employee benefits, paid annual leave and sick leave. So ito po yung kahit po umabsent kayo, paid pa din po yung araw niyo. So see profit sharing and bonuses payable within 12 months. So ayun nga po, sinabi ko kanina yung profit sharing. Ito po yung halimbawa, may na-ibenta kayo na 10 units. So 10 units na yon yung profit doon, sa'yo po mapupunta yung 10%, ganun po, yung profit sharing. Bonuses payable, ito po yung mga bonuses na halimbawa, hindi ko po gano'n na kay sir. Pagkakaintindi ko po, ito po yung sa mga Christmas bonus, gano'n. Na within 12 months pa din po. Last but not the least, yung non-monetary benefits po, such as housing, car, and free or subsidized good. Next, short-term employee benefits. Yung mga unpaid daw po, ito yung sinabi ko po kanina, na short-term employee benefits, mare-recognize po siya as expense and as accrued liability. So, kaya po nagkakaroon ng ganito is, una na po, for example, nung month po ng April, meron po kayong employee of the month, pero natapos na po yung month of April, ngayong month of May, hindi nyo pa rin po siya nababayaran. So, recorded na po siya as accrued liability. So, any short-term benefits paid in advance shall be recognized as a prepayment. So, para lang po itong prepaid expenses, no? Nauna nyo po ibigay yung benefits bago po yung inihingi po natin na service galing po sa employee. Kapag hindi naman po nila nagawa yung pinapagawa natin na dapat na para maging deserving po sila sa benefit, i-rededuct naman po siya sa future payments. Or pwede rin po na lang i-cash refund. So, short-term benefits are recognized periodically. So, nare-recognize na po kada end of accounting period. An entity may compensate employees for absences for various reasons such as vacation, holiday, maternity, or paternity. So, kasama rin po sa short-term employee benefits yung mga, halimbawa, may buntis po, so kailangan mag-leave. Sa mga teacher natin nung dati, kapag nag-leave po sila, lalo na po sa public, meron pa rin pong bayad meron pa rin po silang natatanggap na salary. Ito po, meron po ba kayong questions bago po tayo magpatuloy or additional information? Type 1 lang po kung wala na or type 2 kung meron po. Okay, so let's proceed po. So ito po, meron po tayong mga entitlements sa short-term employee benefits. Yung una po is accumulating and B is non-accumulating. So let's first explain what is accumulating. So from the word itself, accumulate, ibig sabihin, naiipon po. For example, last year, hindi ka po 3 out of 5 na pwede ka pong mag-day off, 3 lang po yung nagamit niya, so may 2 pa natira. Pwede po siyang maipon and can be forwarded this current period po. So, bali magiging 7 na po yung pwedeng yung day off. So, under accumulating, meron po tayong 2 types, which is vesting and non-vesting. So, ang vesting po, pwede po, convertible po siya sa money. So, yung 2 na natira nyo po last year, pwede nyo po siyang i-convert sa money. Meanwhile, yung non-vesting, ayun nga po, non-vesting, ibig sabihin, hindi po siya naka-convert sa money or cannot be monetized. So, ayun po. Non-accumulating, ganun po, cannot carry forward po. So, tandaan lang po natin kapag sinabing accumulating, naiipon, non-accumulating, hindi po naiipon. Vesting, convertible sa money, non-vesting, hindi po convertible sa money. So, let's proceed. Ito po, short-term employee benefits, compensated balances are recognized as follows. So, yung mga accumulating and vesting po, ito po yung sinabi kanina na naiipon at naka-convert into money. So, ayun po, can be monetized in the future period. So, kahit po lumipas na po yung last period, pwede nyo pa po siyang makuha sa susunod pa po na period. So, accumulating and non-vesting, ito po yung A pala, yung vesting can be converted to money po. Yan ha. So, ito po, accumulating, naiipon po siya, pero hindi po, hindi naka-convert sa money. So, non-accumulating, as simple as that, hindi po naki-carry forward. So, ito po yung example ng short-term employee benefits. I-discuss po ito or proceed na po tayo? Proceed na lang tayo, no? So, under some profit-sharing plans, employees shall receive a share of profit. So, ito po yung katulad ng sinabi ko, kapag meron pong 10% halimbawa meron ka pong 10% sa profit, ito po yung tinatawag na profit-sharing plans po. So, the entity shall recognize the expected costs only when the entity has present legal or constructive obligation to make such payments as a result of the past event. So, yung mga ganito po, kapag, ano bang tawag dito? Sino po pwede mag-explain? Kasi hindi ko po gano'n na-gets dito. Mag-on mic na lang po. Hello. Okay, so wala po. Dito na lang po tayo sa last sentence. If profit sharing and bonuses are not due wholly within 12 months, those payments are other long-term employee benefits. So katulad po na sinabi kanina, characteristic ng short-term employee benefits is payable po siya for within 12 months po. Pero kung hindi na po siya within 12 months, matatawag na po siyang other long-term employee benefits. So, ito po. Short-term employee benefits includes all except A. Wages, salaries, and statutory contributions. B. Short-term compensated absence. Type nyo lang po yung answer niyo. C. Profit sharing and bonuses payable in more than 12 months after the end of the reporting period. D. All of the above. Ano pong sagot? Yes po. C. Bakit po letter C? Pwede pong may mag-explain.
Ako na lang po. Kasi short-term employee benefits, kasi nga di ba dapat in 12 months lang siya dapat mabigay sa mga employees mo. Dito sa letter C, payable in more than 12 months siya. Kaya hindi siya kasama sa short-term employee benefits. Yun lang po.
Thank you po, Miss Andrea. No? Tama po yung sagot niya. Walang labis, walang kulang. So, let's proceed sa next question. So, type nyo lang po ulit, no? Yung sagot niyo. Which of the following is not a characteristic of short-term employee benefits? A. No actual assumptions are required to measure the benefit obligation. B. There is no possibility of any actual gain or loss. C. Short-term benefits are payable no later than 12 months after year end. D. Short-term employee benefit obligations are measured on a discounted basis. Ang tanong po dito is not characteristic po ng short-term employee benefits. C, D. Hindi po. Meron pa po ba kayong ibang answer? So, I'm sorry po, hindi po letter D yung sagot. So, sabihin ko lang po yung sagot para mabilis tayo. Ang sabi po dun sa video lesson ni Sir, ang sagot po dun is A. No actual assumptions are required to measure the benefit obligation. Unang-una po, wait lang, explain ko po muna bakit hindi po letter C. Short-term employee benefits are payable no later than 12 months. Ibig sabihin, hindi daw pwedeng lumagpas ng 12 months. So, characteristic siya ng short-term employee, di ba? Ang tinatanong po dito is not a characteristic. So, X na po siya. Letter D. Short-term employee benefits obligation are measured on discounted basis. Sabi po ni Sir sa video lesson, ang discounted basis daw po is per accounting period. Ang short-term employee benefits po ay nasisettle within 12 months, di ba? So, pasok po siya doon sa discounted basis na sinasabi. So, characteristic din po siya ng short-term employee benefits. So, X na rin po.
May tanong.
Yes po?
Kasi sabi dito sa libro ako naka-base, sabi, short-term employees' benefits are measured on an undiscounted basis. So, nalilito ko bakit characteristic siya kung mini-measure yung short-term employee benefits sa undiscounted basis. Tapos sabi pa, accounting for short-term employee benefits is fairly straightforward because there are no actuarial assumptions. Hindi kaya baliktad. Tanong lang.
Okay. Sige, sorry pa. Hindi ko na rin po kasi gano'ng matandaan. So, ang correct answer po is letter D. Kasi po, based po dun sa libro ni kay Valix po, undiscounted basis
Yes
na
po,
po.
kay Valix. Kasi
Sige po.
doon
Thank
naka-base yung mga PPT ni Sir.
Okay po. Thank you po. Thank you po for correcting me. So, ang sagot po dito is discounted base, yung letter D po. Kasi ang ginagamit daw po is undiscounted basis. So, thank you again. Let's proceed po sa next question. What are compensated balance? So, type nyo na lang po sa chat box kung ano po yung correct answer.
Excuse po, may tanong lang po ko dun sa tanong nung kaninang slide po.
Yes po, proceed.
Ano po ata siya? I think letter, ano po ata? Tawag dito? Letter A po. Kasi di ba sabi, no actuarial assumptions are required to measure the benefit obligation. Wala pong actuarial assumption pag short-term benefits. Kasi di ba sa actuarial assumption, nagkakaroon ng discounts. Bakit nagkakaroon ng discounts? Nagkakaroon po ng discounts kasi may mga employees na parang in the long run, pwedeng umalis na sila sa company. So, hindi na nila makukuha if long-term benefit yung tawag dito, yung long-term yung benefit. So, yung sinasabi naman po dun sa letter D na short-term employee benefit obligations are measured on a discounted basis. Dapat po 'di ba non-discounted basis siya kasi nga po walang actuarial assumption. So I think tama po yung sagot na letter A. Kasi kapag letter D po yung sagot, dapat non-discounted basis. Ay yung nakalagay po dito, discounted basis. Yun lang po. Share ko lang.
CA, yung niya, not a characteristic. Ibig sabihin, alin dyan yung hindi kasama sa characteristic ng short-term employee benefits. Kasi kapag sinabi natin discounted basis, alam ko rin pang long-term, pang long-term employee benefits. So, feeling ko, ayun, letter D yung sagot. Alam ko sinabi yan ni Sir na yung discounted basis is, pang long-term.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you po sa inyong participation. So, we will settle here na yung sagot po is letter D. So, meron pa po bang may ibang answer? So, mukhang wala na po. Proceed na po tayo next question. So, pwede po ulit pa-type ng answer niyo dito. Okay, sabi po ni Ms. Sherry's, characteristic daw po ng post-employment benefits yung discounted basis. So, ano pong sagot niyo dito? What are compensated balances? Paki-type na lang po. A, unpaid time off. B, a form of healthcare. C, payroll deduction. D, paid time off. Yes po, the answer is paid time off. So, sino po gusto mag-explain kung bakit po? Kung bakit po letter D yung answer nila? Sino pong gusto magsabi po kung bakit po ganun po yung nila? Sagot?
Sige po, ako na lang po. Kasi po paid yung nakalagay, so compensated balances siya.
Okay, ayun po, no more, no less. Wait lang po, ayusin ko lang yung dito. So, next question po, sino pong gusto magsagot? Type nyo na lang po pala yung sagot nyo, no? These are compensated absences that are carried forward and can be used in future periods, and the employees are entitled to a cash payment for unused entitlement on leaving during the week. So, yes, letter A po yung sagot. Sino po gusto mag-explain? Iba naman po, bukod po kay Miss Rhea and kay Miss Rosie.
Ako na lang po. So, letter A, accumulating investing. So, sabi dito, yung compensated balances daw na naki-carried forward at pwedeng magamit sa future periods, tsaka na entitled to cash payment. So, accumulating investing, din nga, accumulating, naiipon siya, pwede mo pang magamit sa future. Investing, pwede mo siyang ma-convert into cash. Yun lang po.
Okay po, exactly. No more, no less. So, meron pa po ba kayong dagdag na information or may questions po kayo about short-term employee benefits? Type 1 lang po kung meron, type 2 kung hindi, kung wala pala. Okay, so mukhang wala na po. Let's proceed sa other long-term employee benefits. So, sa lahat po ng employee benefits, ito na po yung pinakamaikli. Other long-term employee benefits are all employee benefits other than, so maliban sa lahat, matatawag po na other long-term kapag hindi po siya na-identify as short-term, post-employment, and termination benefits. So, ano-ano po ba yung mga example ng other long-term? Long-term paid absence such as long service or sabbatical leave. So, meron po ba may alam dito kung ano po yung sabbatical leave?
Try ko po. Yung sabbatical leave, yung parang halimbawa, nagkatrabaho ko sa isang kumpanya, tapos ipapadala ka nila sa ibang lugar or para mag-train or para kumuha ng professional skills, tapos babalik ka sa kumpanya nyo para i-continue yung service mo. Ganun po.
Yes po, exactly. Yun po yung sinabi ni Miss Andrea, no? So, hindi na po ako magdudwell doon. Next na other long-term po na employee benefit, yung Jubilee or other long service benefit. So, sino po may alam ng Jubilee po? Pwede po kayo mag-explain? So, sino po may alam? Sige po.
Parang ang matatandaan ko yun ata yung kunwari naka 5 years ka sa company. Parang every kunwari every 5 years nagse-celebrate sila, kunwari naka 30 years ka sa isang company. So meron kang benefit na makukuha kapag ganun ka nakatagal sa isang kumpanya.
Okay po, thank you po, Ms. Rhea.
Ano po? Add ko lang po sa sinabi ni Rhea. Yan po yung parang voluntary. Yung parang halimbawa, naka 30 years ka na, tapos malapit na siya sa retirement age. Ganon. Di ba parang pag inabutan kasi ng retirement age dun sa company, is mas malaki yung babayaran ng company. Dun parang sa under sa Jubilee, parang isa rin siyang technique ng entity para ma-convince na yung employee niya na umalis na dun sa tawag sa company. Parang bibigyan din kasi sila dyan ng isang malakihang parang bonus baga, incentive kasi ang tagal din nila nagtrabaho sa entity, ganun. Parang mas mababa yung parang magiging expense nila dun sa pagpaparetire dun sa employee. Kumbaga parang voluntary na siya, tawag dito, pagpaparetire, ganun po.
Thank you po. Sino po may ibang additional information before I proceed? Okay po. So mukhang wala na po. Proceed na po ako sa next. Long-term disability benefit. So ito po yung mga benefits halimbawa na aksidente ka po sa site ng company nga. So bibigyan ka po nila ng benefits ng long-term kasi nga po doon nyo po nakuha yung disability nga yun sa accident. So next is profit sharing and bonuses beyond 12 months. So kaya po siya natawag na other long-term is beyond 12 months po yung profit sharing and bonuses. So next is deferred compensation payable beyond 12 months. So hindi ko po gaano alam yung deferred compensation, pero mukhang ito po yung mga compensation na na-delay po. Pero kaya po tapos beyond 12 months po siya. So ayun lang po yung ginawa kong clue, yung beyond 12 months. Kasi kapag within 12 months, short-term benefits na po siya. So other long-term employee benefits are accounted for similar to defined benefit plans except all is recognized in profit or loss. So, yung mga ganito daw po is recorded sa profit or loss section. So, meron pa po ba kayong additional info before we proceed sa termination benefits? So, ayun po, mukhang wala naman na po. So, let's proceed po sa pangatlong employee benefit, termination benefits. Termination benefits are those that are provided in exchange for the termination of an employee's employment as a result of either an entity's decision to terminate an employee's employment before the normal retirement date. So I think ito po yung sinasabi ni Mr. Christian Angelo kanina na nag-offer po sila ng magandang benefit para po mag-retire na sila. Dahil po kapag nagpatuloy pa po sa pagtatrabaho yung certain employee na yon is magkakaroon po siya ng post-employment benefits na hanggang kung kailan po yun na napakasobrang haba at mas lalaki po yung gastos nila. So, An employee's decision to accept an offer of benefits in exchange for the termination of employment. So, ayun po, ito po yung mga benefits na tinatanggap ng employee para po voluntary po sila na mag-resign or umalis sa kumpanya. So, take note po sa termination benefits, hindi po dito kasama yung resignation. Ang termination benefits po is yung mismong company po ang lumalapit sa employee para po umalis sa company. So, benefits resulting from termination at the employee's request without the employer's offer is not, ayan po, sinabi na po, is not a termination benefit but rather a post-employment benefit. So, recognized po as liability and expense ulit on termination benefits. So, termination benefits are accounted for in accordance with the nature of the employee benefit. So, review question po ulit. Type nyo lang po sa chat box yung sagot. So, which of the following best describes other long-term benefits? A, B, or C, or D? Yes po. Letter A po ang answer. So, sino pong pwedeng mag-explain? Bukod po kay Miss Andrea, Miss Rhea, Mr. Christian Angela, and Miss Rosie. Si Miss Cherise po, okay lang po ba? Pa-explain lang po kung bakit letter A?
Ano po, sabi po kasi yung other long-term benefits is yung yung benefits that are not due to be settled within 12 months. Kasi yung short term, masisettle siya within 12 months. Kaya naman yung other long-term benefits, hindi siya masisettled within 12 months. Ganun lang.
Yun po, thank you. Exact po yung sagot. So, next po, employee benefits that are payable as a result of an entity's decision to terminate an employee's employment. So, andyan na po yung clue. So, ano pong sagot? Patype na lang po sa chat box. Kamusta po yung iba dyan? Yes po, letter A po yung sagot kasi nga po nakalagay na entity's decision to terminate before the normal retirement date. So, next question. Oh, wala na pala. So, before we proceed sa last na employee benefits, meron po ba kayong tanong, additional information, or may mga mali po na info kanina? Pwede niyo po i-correct? So far, mukhang wala naman po. So let's proceed po sa post-employment benefits. Ito po yung isa sa mga pinakamahaba, no? Post-employment benefits are employee benefits other than termination and short-term benefits that are payable after the completion of employment. So, kapag po tapos na yung employment, ito na yung mga benefits na nare-receive mo nila is categorized as post-employment benefits. So, kasama po daw yung mga retirement benefits such as pensions, tapos yung other post-employment benefits po. So, meron pong 4 types ng post-employee benefits. Yung una po, contributory. Both po yung employer and employee yung nagko-contribute po sa retirement benefit plans. Meanwhile, non-contributory, yung employer lang po mag-isa ang nagko-contribute sa retirement benefit funds ng employee. So, next is funded. Yung retirement fund po ay nakabukod sa employer's control. For example, meron pong certain na company, na malaking company at napakarami po nilang hawak. Napakarami na pong retired na workers nila. So, yung mga fund na po na yon, ito transfer po nila sa isang financial institution para yung financial institution na po na yun, yung magre-release ng mga benefit in the future date. So, yung unfunded po, hindi po nakabukod yung management ng retirement benefits sa fund po ng company. So, ayun po, pakatandaan po yung contributory, non-contributory, funded, and unfunded. So, meron pong dalawang classifications ang post-employment benefits. So, yung una po is defined contributions plan. So, under po sa defined contribution plan, the employer commits to make fixed contribution to a fund. So, yung employer po, nagbibigay po siya ng fixed contribution para po sa retirement benefits ng mga employee. So, yung amount po ng post-employment benefits ay nakadepende po sa contributions na nagawa po sa fund. Tapos, kasi po 'di ba ilalagay po sa isang financial institution 'yon. So meron pong parang investment na nagagawa. So if the fund balance is less, kapag mas malaki po pag mas maliit po yung balance ng fund kaysa sa mga kailangan bayaran, yung employer po ay walang obligasyon. Pakatandaan po ito sa defined contributions plan. If the fund balance is less, the employer has no obligation. So, ayun lang po. Therefore, the risk that the retirement benefits may be insufficient rests with the employee. So, kapag kulang po, bahala na po si employee, labas na po si employee. Next type is defined contributions plan. Since the employer's obligation is limited to the amount that it has agreed to contribute, it simply recognizes the contributions as expense and the liability. So, yung mga sobra daw po, yung mga sobra daw po dito sa contribution, nare-recognize po siya as prepaid expense. For example, malaki po yung yung kinontribute nyo po for this year. So, mare-record po yung sobra na yun as prepaid expense at ide-deduct na po yun sa susunod na accounting cycle. So, ito po yung example sa baba. Hindi ko na po So, ito naman po, defined benefit plan. So, yung defined benefit plan po, kabaliktaran naman po siya ng defined contributions plan. So, kapag po less yung fund kesa sa babayaran, pwede po habulin ng employee yung employer kasi po nakasulat po yun sa agreement nila. So, accounting for defined benefit plan is complex because actual assumptions are necessary. So, ito na po siya, yung nasa tanong kanina. Meron po ditong actuarial assumptions at minimeasure din po siya on a discounted basis. So, ito na po siya. So, meron pong 3-step para ma-define po kung ano po yung para po sa accounting ng defined benefit plan. Ang una is determine the deficit or surplus. So, the deficit or surplus is the difference between the following. So, projected benefit obligation. Ito po yung mga na-compute na po na nakikita po ng company na babayaran po nila in the near future. For example, may nag-retire na employee. So, in the next 10 years, ganito po yung babayaran nila, 10,000 kunwari, ganun. Tapos, yun po, magpo-fall po siya under ng projected benefit obligation or PBO. Fair value of plan asset. So, ito po yung plan asset. Ito po yung fund ng kumpanya para sa post-employment benefits. So, kaya po siya tinatawag na fair value of plan assets kasi yung ganito po madalas ay ini-invest po para po may profit po na makuha at madagdagan po yung fund. So, projected benefit obligation is the present value. Ayun na po, yung sinabi ko kanina. Fair value of plan asset, source of fund. So, if FVPA is less than PBO, the difference is deficit. So, kapag mas maliit po yung fund kesa sa dapat bayaran, ang tawag po doon sa difference is deficit. Ibig sabihin po noon, underfunded, kulang po yung fund. And kapag po mas mataas naman yung FVPA or yung fair value of plan assets, kesa sa projected benefit obligation, yung difference po nila is surplus. Ibig sabihin nun, mas malaki po yung fund kesa sa dapat bayaran. Mhm. So, meron po tayong mga factors dito, yung mga kailangan natin i-consider para po ma-determine natin yung deficit or yung surplus. So, kapag po sa increase na fair value ng plan asset, meron po tayong contribution to the plan. So, alam na po natin yan, no? Gets na natin yan. Actual return on plan assets. Ito na po yung sinasabi ko kanina. Yung fair value ng plan assets, ini-invest po siya sa ibang company, and then may mga profit po doon na magagawa. So, yung profit na po yun ay tinatawag na actual return on plan assets. So, kapag nagdi-decrease naman po yung plan asset kapag nagbayad ka na po sa mga retirees, yung mga nag-retire na employee, kapag nabayaran nyo na po sila, magdi-decrease na po yung fair value ng plan asset. So, realized loss on plan asset. So, ito naman po yung kabaliktaran ng actual return. So, hindi naman po lahat ng investment, profit po yung ibinibigay, yung iba po, syempre loss. So, ito na po siya sa realized loss on plan assets. So, nag-i-increase naman po yung benefit obligation, projected benefit obligation, kapag current service cost. Ibig sabihin, on this accounting period, meron po yung mga babayaran nyo po, ayun po yun. Tapos yung past service cost, ito na po yung mga prior periods po, yung mga nakaraang accounting period, yung mga dapat bayaran pero hindi nabayaran. So, interest expense on TBO, and last yung actuarial loss. So, mag-decrease naman po yung benefit obligation kapag nagbayad po ulit sa mga retirees. So, kapag nagbayad kayo sa retirees, mababawasan yung pera mo, mababawasan yung fund, kaya bumaba yung fair value. Tapos mababawasan din yung mga dapat mong bayaran, kaya po nag-decrease din yung TBO. So, actuarial gain. Sino po pwedeng mag-explain ng actuarial loss and actuarial gain? Kasi hindi ko rin po gano'n na tandaan ko. Meron po ba? Gusto mag-explain ng actuarial loss and actuarial gain? So, mukha pong wala. So, proceed na po tayo. So, ito po. Napanood nyo naman na po siguro yung recorded lesson, no? So, tignan po natin if meron po kayong na tandaan. So, pakitype na lang po sa chat box yung sagot nyo. So, generous company maintains a fund to cover its pension plan. The following date relate to the fund for the current year. So, noong January 1, meron po silang 8,750,000 na value ng fair value of plan assets. So, during the year, meron po silang mga dapat bayaran ay mga gain. So, pension benefits paid, meron po tayong 600,000. Contribution made to the plan may 700,000 and the actual return in plan assets 950,000. So, please type your answer na lang po sa chat box. So, yung iba po dyan, kamusta po? Meron po ba kayong answer dito? Sa tanong na ito? Kung wala po, magpa-proceed niyo po ako. So, nakalagay po dito is fair value of plan assets. So, meron po tayong 8,750,000. So, during the year, meron kayong pension benefits na binayaran. So, increase po ba yan o decrease? Balik po tayo dito. Ang nakalagay pension benefits paid, so nagbayad ka po sa mga retirees mo. Dito po sa fair value asset, nakalagay decrease. Dito po, hindi pala kita yung cursor. The fair value of plan asset is decreased by A, benefits paid to retirees. So, decrease po siya. 8,750,000 minus 600,000 is 8,150,000. And the next is contribution made to the plan. Is 700,000. Increase po ba ito sa fair value of plan asset or decrease? So, sabi po dito, the fair value of plan asset is increased by A, contribution to the plan. So, increase daw po. 8,150,000 plus 700,000 is equals to 8,150,000. So, next is actual return on plan assets. So, ito po siya. Sa the fair value of plan asset is increased by letter B po siya, actual return. Ito po yung mga gain po sa investment ng fair value of plan asset. So, tama po na yung sagot is letter B, 9.8, 9,100,000. Ito po pala siya. So, mukhang malinaw naman na po sa lahat. Let's proceed. So, ayun. Proceed po tayo dito. Ay, huwag na pala. Masyadong mahaba. Next na po. Ito na lang po yung PPT. So, determine the prepaid asset, accrued life benefits. So, kapag meron daw pong deficit, yung deficit daw po yun is a non-current liability. So, kasi po deficit, kulang yung fund. Ibig sabihin, meron ka pang kailangan bayaran. Payable, ibig sabihin, liability. So, ayun po. If there's a surplus, iti-treat daw po yung surplus as prepaid benefit cost. So, prepaid, ibig sabihin, nauna na po yung bayad niyo bago mo po makakonsume yung kung ano man po yun. So, dito naman po, sa defined benefit plan, ito po yung sa bumubuo sa PBO. So, 1, service cost which comprises A, current service cost, nasabi ko na po yan, any gain or loss on plan settlement. Letter 2. Number 2, net interest on defined benefit liability or asset. So, yung 1 and 2 po, recognize po siya sa profit and loss. Meanwhile, yung 3 po is recognized sa other comprehensive income. So, ayun po, pakatandaan na lang po natin. Number 2, interest expense, interest income, interest expense. So, tandaan na lang po natin yung mga interest na yan ay, recognize sa profit and loss. So, remeasurement of defined benefit. Yung mga remeasurement po, under po siya ng OCI or other comprehensive income. So, ayun na po, nasabi ko na kanina kung ano yung current service cost, tas past service cost. Ito po. Plan amendment includes introduction of defined benefit plan or changes to an existing defined benefit plan. So, kung meron po tayong pagbabago sa defined benefit plan, yun po yung tinatawag na plan amendment. So, plan curtailment is a significant reduction by the entity in the number of employees. So, sa defined benefit plan, ito po yung sinasabi po ulit ni Mr. Chris and Angelo kanina na may mga employees po na inaasahan na po magre-retire on this year. So, hindi na po mag-resign in this year. So, hindi na po natin sila isasama sa defined benefit plan. Yun po yung tinatawag na plan curtailment. So, gain or loss on settlement arises on the employer's obligation. Okay, proceed na. So, ito po. Yung defined benefit cost, interest expense on defined benefit liability. So, para daw po makuha to, multiply daw po yung defined benefit obligation sa beginning reporting period sa discount rate ng beginning reporting period. So, interest income, yung i-multiply mo lang po yung fair value ng plan assets sa discount rate na ibinigay noong reporting period. Interest expense po on effect of asset ceiling. Computed by multiplying the effect of asset ceiling by, sino po may alam na asset ceiling? Ito pala siya, no? Present value of any economic benefits available in the form of refunds. Sino po may alam nito? Pwede niyo pong i-discuss now? So, hindi ko po ito magano mag-gets eh. So, ang pagkakaintindi ko lang po dito is yung mga halimbawa sa FVPA mo. Kailangan kasi ito yung parang divider. Kapag lumagpas dito, tawag na doon is yung surplus. Tapos kapag bumaba, tawag na po doon deficit. So, yung asset ceiling, ito po yung nagsisilbing barrier between the two. So, proceed. Saan tayo? So, ito. The measurement of plan assets. So, tawag dito. So, ayun po, pakibasa na lang po yung sinad ni Rhea. Ito po, remeasurement of plan assets. Kapag daw po mas mataas yung actual return kaysa po sa interest income, tawag po doon is remeasurement gain. Kapag naman po mas mababa yung actual return kaysa sa interest income, ayun po, ay tinatawag na remeasurement loss. So, sinabi po dito kanina na yung interest income FBPA times yung discount rate na given. So, ayun po. Sige, ako yun. Yung plan assets naman is long-term benefit fund and qualifying insurance policy. So, pakatandaan na lang po to yung mga nandito. Okay, so sino po? Pakitype na lang po yung answer nyo, no? Sa question na nasa screen. So, sabi po dito, an employer pays lump sum to employees when they retire. The lump sum is equal to 5% of their salary in the final year of service. For every year of service, the following data pertain to a certain employee. So, ano pong sagot dito? Determine daw po yung projected benefit obligation each year. So, sino po may alam ng sagot? Nakalimutan ko ba kasi yung sagot dito. Type nyo na lang po yung answer. So, medyo complicated pala yun. So, dito na lang po tayo. No? Post-employment employee benefits includes all of the following except, type nyo na lang po. Ang hinahanap po is post-employment benefits. Ay, except pala sa post-employee benefits. Yes po, letter A. Kasi po, categorize po yung non-monetary benefits na housing, car, and subsidized goods as short-term. So next, if a benefit plan under which an entity pays a fixed contribution into a separate fund po and will have no legal or constructive obligation to pay further contributions if the fund becomes insufficient to pay employee benefits. So ano pong sagot dito? Separate daw po yung fund, pero wala na daw pong responsibility yung employer kapag kulang po yung fund. So yes, the answer is letter B, defined contribution plan. Pakitip na lang po muli yung answer. The entity retains the obligation for the repayment of retirement benefits without the establishment of separate fund. So, yung payment daw po ay naka-separate fund. So, ano pong tawag doon sa plan na yon? Ang tanong po is, no, without the establishment of separate fund. So, iisa lang po yung nagmamanage ng fund ng kumpanya at yung fund ng tawag dito na para sa post-employment. So ayun po, unfunded plan. So ayun po, end na po ng past 19. Let's proceed po sa past 20. Kay Miss Andrea Tabunan po ba yan?
Yes po.
Go pa, pwede na po kayo mag-present.
Share ko lang po yung presentation. Good evening po. Naka-present na po ba? Kita nyo na po ba yung screen ko? Hello!
Yes, pakita na po.
Hi, thank you po. So, past 20 government grants. Let's start. I'm Andrea Sitabunan po pala from SBAC Bandi. So, sana yung mga i-share kong information is sana matutunan nyo, and kung may mga kulang man or may mali man akong masabi, sana may correct na. Thank you. So, definition of government grants, past 20, paragraph 3 defines government grant as assistance by government in the form of transfer of resources to an entity in return for part or future compliance with certain conditions relating to the operating activities of the entity. So, umpisahan natin sa government grants. So, grants, ibig sabihin bigay. Government, ibig sabihin bigay ng government. So, meron tayong tatlong pwedeng panggalingan ng government grants. So, meron tayong local government, pwedeng mga cities or mga syudad. Pwede ring national government or yung galing sa Pilipinas. Pwede ring mga international government or yung mga foreign government sa labas ng bansa. So, yun nga, government grant, transfer of resources to an entity. So, from government, binibigyan tayo ng grant sa isang entity in return or part or future compliance with certain conditions. So yung government grant na yun is hindi natin matatanggap kung hindi natin ma-fulfill yung condition na naka-attach dun sa government grant na yun. So, government grants can be cash or non-cash assets. Cash, yun nga, pera, or non-cash assets, pwedeng property, land, building, equipment, or machinery. So, in recognition and measurement of government grants, government grants shall be recognized when there is reasonable assurance that, number 1, the entity will comply with the conditions attaching to the grant. So, mararecognize na natin yung isang government, yung bigay sa atin na as government grant, kung yung entity is magko-comply or mamimit niya yung condition na naka-attach dun sa government grant. Sunod naman na criteria para ma-recognize natin na government grant yon, kailangan yung grant is meron tayong assurance na marireceive talaga natin yung grant. So, yun ang tatandaan natin. Itong dalawang to, kailangan makita natin to para ma-recognize natin yung government grant. So, next, government grant can be either monetary or non-monetary. So, yun nga. For monetary grants, it is measured based on the amount of cash received or fair value of amount receivable. So, for monetary grants, kung ano yung amount ng cash na na-receive mo, yun yung i-record mo. So, for example, nakatanggap ka ng 10 million na government grant, debit cash, 10 million, credit, deferred grant income. Kasi nga, utang pa lang yun. Hindi mo pa na-earn yung income. So, for non-monetary grants such as land, ito yung mga sinabi ko kanina na property, land, building, equipment, or machinery, It is measured at fair value of the asset received or alternatively measured at nominal amount. So yung for monetary grants naman, i-record natin siya sa fair value. Halimbawa, nakatanggap tayo ng equipment na merong fair value ng 500,000. So, debit natin, equipment, 500,000, credit, deferred grant income, 500,000. So, alternatively, measure din siya sa nominal amount. Yung nominal amount na yan, kilala rin bilang cost nung mismong asset na natanggap natin. So, next, approaches in accounting. Naririnig po ba ko? Max naman, nagigets niyo naman.
Yes po.
Yes po.
Opo.
Thank you po. So, we have two approaches in accounting for government grant. We have income approach and capital approach. In income approach, government grant shall be recognized as income over the periods necessary to match them with the related cost which they are intended to compensate on a systematic basis. Past 20 uses income approach. So, in income approach, hindi natin agad-agad ma-recognize as income yung natanggap nating government grant. Kasi nga, pag natanggap natin yun, utang pa lang yun natin. Hanggang sa, from time to time na nai-incur natin yung related expenses, para sa government grant na yun, dun lang din natin ma-recognize yung income natin. Halimbawa na lang, binigyan tayo ng government grant na magbibigay tayo ng libreng, halimbawa, bus company tayo, magbibigay tayo ng libreng sakay sa mga pasahero. So habang na-fulfill mo yung condition na magbibigay ka ng mga libreng sakay sa pasahero, dun mo lang mararecognize unti-unti yung income from dun sa government grant na natatanggap natin. Then, sa second approach naman, capital approach, government grant shall be credited directly to equity. So yung natatanggap naman natin under capital approach, i-recognize agad natin siya sa equity. So halimbawa na nga lang naka-receive tayo, debit asset received or grant received, credit owner's capital kung sole proprietorship ka, or credit shareholders capital kung corporation kayo. Next. So, past 20 does not apply to, meron tayong 4 dito. Hindi ko na masyadong lalalayman yung explanation kasi nga, si Sir hindi naman ganun masyado in-explain kasi nga hindi naman dito nag-a-apply yung past 20. So, letter A, accounting for government grant under hyperinflationary economies. So, dito, ang sabi lang ni Sir, under hyperinflationary economies, ibang pass yung mag-guide dito. So letter B, tax benefits such as income tax holidays and investment tax credits. So about to sa mga taxation, so wala tayong kinalaman dito. Pinag-usapan lang natin yung past 20 government grants. So letter C, government participation in the ownership of the entity. So kapag naman, halimbawa, yung government is may participation dun sa financing activities or mga transactions ng entity na yun, hindi siya ma-recognize as government grant kasi nga, parang matatawag na government-controlled yung corporation na yun or yung entity na yun. Kaya kahit bigyan sila ng pera ng government, hindi siya matatawag na grant kasi nga parang kasama siya dun sa mga nagpa-process, parang ganun, sa company na yun. So letter D, government grants covered by past 41 agriculture. So yun nga, yung mga government grants naman na may kinalaman sa agricultural activities, hindi siya pasok sa past 20, kundi pasok siya sa past 41 agriculture. So, ito naman po tayo sa examples of government grant. Kung may mga tanong po kayo, chat nyo lang or on nyo lang yung mic. Yan lang. Thank you. Examples of government grant. Ang pinaka-example ng government grant is, pinaka-common na example is cash, syempre. So letter A, receipt of cash, land, or other non-cash assets from the government subject to compliance with certain conditions. So ito nga yung example ko kanina. Nakakatanggap ka lang ng cash kung mamimit mo yung condition na naka-attach doon. And halimbawa naman sa land, kung bibigyan ka ng government grant na land, halimbawa, ang condition nila, kailangan mo magtayo ng building sa land na yan, at yung mga trabahador mo na kukuhain is galing din doon sa area na yon. Kapag na-meet mo yung condition na yun, dun mo makukuha or dun mo mare-recognize yung government grant na yun. So, letter B, receipt of financial aid in case of loss from a calamity. So, yun nga, kapag naman yung government is namimigay ng financial aid or yung pera para sa mga nasawi or nasalanta ng bagyo, ng mga earthquake, mga ganon, ma-recognize din natin siya as government grant. So, letter C, forgiveness of an existing loan from the government. So, ito naman, halimbawa may utang tayo sa government, tapos ang taas na ng interest ng utang natin. So, ang government, parang finorgive na yung loan natin, pinabayaran na lang sa atin yung pinaka-principal loan na inutang natin sa kanila. So, kapag may ganun, kapag tinanggal yung interest ng utang natin, maituturing rin siya ng government grant. So, letter D, benefit of a government loan with below market rate of interest. So, halimbawa naman, pinautang tayo ng government na mas mababa dun sa normal na market rate of interest. Halimbawa, ang normal market rate of interest is 12%. Ang binigay lang sa atin ng government is 6% lang para sa inutang natin. So, yung ganitong situation, may tuturing din natin siya na government grant. So, next. Classification of government grant. We have two classification. First, grant related to asset. Second, grant related to income. So letter A, grant related to asset, government grant whose primary condition is that an entity qualifying for the grant shall purchase, construct, or otherwise acquire a long-term income. So, halimbawa ng mga government grants ito is halimbawa, bibigyan ka nila ng, yun nga yung kanina rin, bibigyan ka nila ng lupa, kapalit, magtatayo ka ng building doon sa lupang yon. Yun yung mga examples. Halimbawa rin, bibigyan ka nila ng pera, pero kailangan mong bumili ng equipment na to. Ganon. So, letter B naman, grant related to income, government grant other than grant related to assets. So, yung definition ng grant related to income is residual definition lang ng grant related to assets. So, lahat ng hindi masasama dito sa grant related to asset is mapupunta na dito, mare-recognize sa grant related to income. So, wait lang. So, accounting for government grant. Government grant shall be recognized as income on a systematic basis over the periods in which entity recognizes as expense the related cost for which the grant is intended to compensate. So yun nga, accounting for government grant, yung government grant is mara-recognize natin yung income from the government grant if unti-unti nating mafulfill or mamimit yung condition na naka-attach doon. So habang hindi ka pa nakakapag-incur ng expenses or hindi mo pa nagagawa yung mga condition nila, mananatili lang na utang yung government grant na natanggap natin. Yun lang yan. So, ito na. First illustration. Dito, hindi ko muna kayo parang tatanong. Hindi, pwede rin naman. Pero mamaya kasi may ibang illustration para mas magets natin. So, illustration number 1. Grant in recognition of specific expenses shall be recognized as income over the period of the related expense. An entity received a grant of 15 million from the national government for the purpose of defraying safety and environmental expenses. Over the period of the 3 years, the safety and environmental expenses will be incurred by the entity as follows. So, meron tayo ditong expected na environmental expenses for 3 years. So, papakita ko na agad yung mga entry natin para mabilis. So, debit cash 15 million, ito, naka-receive tayo ng grant income from the national government. Debit cash 15 million, credit deferred grant income 15 million. So tingin nyo, anong account yung deferred grant income? Asset, liability, income, expenses, or equity? Kahit chat nyo lang sa chat box or pwede rin sumagot on mic. Itong deferred grant income, anong account yan? Income, ano po kung ibang sagot? Asset. Let's see. Laya. So, yun nga po. Tama po. Liability po yung tamang sagot. Kasi nga, ang deferred grant income, ibig sabihin, deferred, hindi pa natin, nakuha na natin yung amount pero hindi pa natin nagagawa yung dapat nating condition na dapat gawin. So, mananatili siyang liability muna. So, yun nga. After natin ma-recognize yung grant, government grant, yung expenses naman yung entry natin. So, for first year lang kukuhain muna natin. So, first year meron tayong 2 million na environmental expenses. So, debit, environmental expense, 2 million. Credit, cash, 2 million. So, paano natin nakuha tong grant income? Paano natin itong na-earn na income na itong 3 million na to? So, yun nga, gagamitin nating method is pro rata. So, ito na. So, for first year, itong 2 million na to, 2 million dito galing yan. First year, 2 million over 10 million na total expenses for the 3 years times 15 million yung nakuha nating government grant income is equal to 3 million. Kaya yun yung i-recognize natin na income for the first year. So, debit, deferred grant income, so nabawasan yung utang natin ng 3 million, credit grant income 3 million. Nag-credit tayo ng income, so ibig sabihin, nag-recognize tayo ng income na 3 million. So, yan. Sana na-gets niyo. Kung may tanong man, chat niyo lang or on mic lang kayo. So, second illustration, grant related to depreciable asset shall be recognized as income over the periods and in proportion to the depreciation of the related asset. So, dito naman, ang pag-recognize ng income natin kung depreciable asset yung grant natin na nakuha is in proportion siya doon sa pagkuha ng depreciation ng related asset. So, ito na nga, halimbawa, an entity received a grant of 50 million from the Australian government for the acquisition of chemical facility within an estimated cost of 80 million and useful life of 5 years. Straight line method is used. So, yun nga, naka-receive. Ipakita ko na agad yung entry natin. So, debit cash 50 million, itong na-receive natin from the Australian government. Credit deferred grant income, utang pa lang siya. So, yun, assume natin na nagawa na yung chemical facility na 80 million. So, debit building, 80 million, credit cash, 80 million. So, paano natin nakuha yung depreciation na 16 million? So, yun nga, yung normal lang na straight line method ang ginamit dito. So, 80 million, wala naman tayong residual value na i-minus. So, 80 million divided by 5 is equal to 16 million. Kaya nakuha natin itong depreciation. So, debit depreciation 16 million, credit accumulated depreciation 16 million. So, yung i-recognize naman nating income is in proportion nga dun sa pagkuha ng depreciation. So, yung 50 million na to, na government grant income, is i-divide rin natin siya sa 5 years, gaya ng pagkuha natin ng depreciation ng related asset. So, 50 million divided by 5 is equal to 10 million. So, deferred grant income, nabawasan ng utang natin ng 10 million, at nag-credit tayo or nag-recognize tayo ng 10 million na income. So, next. Nagets pa ba? Okay lang? Okay. So, itong illustration naman, grant related to non-depreciable asset requiring fulfillment of certain conditions shall be recognized as income over the periods which bear the cost of meeting the conditions. So, ito naman, in non-depreciable asset naman, mare-recognize yung income habang na-fulfill mo yung certain conditions na naka-attach dun sa grant na yon. So, for example, an entity is granted a large tract of land in Mindanao by the national government. The fair value of land is 60 million. The grant requires that the entity shall construct a refinery on the site. The cost of the refinery is estimated to be 100 million and the useful life is 20 years. So, itlabas ko na agad yung entries natin. So, kakaiba naman to, hindi cash ang natanggap natin government grant, kundi land. So, kapag nga non-monetary items yung tanggap natin, fair value yung i-recognize natin. So, 60 million, debit land, 60 million, credit, deferred grant income, 60 million, utang pa lang. So, assume natin na natapos na yung refinery. Yung refinery para siyang chemical facilities, yun nga, parang building din. So, assume natin na natapos na siya in 1 year. So, debit refinery, 100 million, credit cash, 100 million. So, yung depreciation na 5,000, ganun din. Yung 100 million na meron tayong cost ng refinery, divide lang natin sa 20 is equal to 5 million. Kaya debit depreciation 5 million, credit accumulated depreciation 5 million. So yun naman yung i-recognize natin income for this year. So ganun din, i-divide rin natin siya sa 20 years. So 60 million divided by 20 years is equal to 3 million. So debit, deferred grant income, nabawasan ng utang natin, at credit grant income 3 million, nadagdagan yung income natin. So next, illustration. Grant that becomes receivable as compensation for expenses or losses already incurred or for the purpose of giving immediate financial support to the entity with no further related cost shall be recognized as income of the period in which it becomes receivable. So sabi dito, kapag ang na-receive nating government grant is, halimbawa, immediate financial support or need talaga siya, yung pag natanggap mo, wala ka nang kailangan gawing related na condition kasi nga ang pinaka-purpose ng pagka-receive natin is para sa mga naapektuhan nung sakuna or calamities. So kapag na-receive daw natin siya, i-recognize daw natin siya agad as income. So an example, an entity received a grant of 50 million from the USA government to compensate for massive losses incurred because of recent earthquake. So ang debit ay ang entries natin dyan. So debit cash 50 million from the USA government. Credit agad natin grant income 50 million. Okay, next slide. Ito na, review problem. Sana dito kayo mag-participate. So an entity received a government grant under the following independent situations. An entity received a grant of 30 million from British government in order to defray safety and environmental costs within the area where the entity is located. The safety and environmental costs are expected to be incurred over 4 years, respectively 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, and 8 million. So kahit 1 year lang, i-solve natin. Kung sino may gusto sumagot, yung entry sa, may nag-chat pala. Yung entry sa pag na-recognize na yung government grant income, yung entry sa environmental cost, tapos ano yung entry dun sa pag-recognize ng income natin in proportion dun sa expense na na-incur natin. So, sige lang. Try nyo lang i-solve ang ilang seconds. So, yung dito, para makuha yung income, di ba, add lang itong 4 na to. Itong 2 million, add, divide sa total neto, times sa 30 million na nakuha natin na government grant para makuha niyo yung government. Para makuha niyo yung income pala. Sorry po. Done na. So, tingnan nyo na lang kung tama yung mga sagot. Or kung may gustong sumagot, mag-on mic lang or chat nyo lang dito sa box. Sa chat box, wala. Gusto ba? Sige, pakita ko na lang. So, yun nga, debit cash, 30 million yung na-receive natin from the British government. Credit deferred grant income. So, yung environmental expense for the first year, debit environmental expense, 2 million. Credit cash, 2 million. So, yung deferred grant income na mara-recognize natin is, ito nga, 2 million divided by 20 million, yung total netong 4 na expenses na to, times 30 million yung na-receive natin grant income is equal to 3 million. Yun yung i-recognize natin as income. Gets po ba? Di ba? So, ito na. Next na natin. Wait lang. Or kung gusto nyo, next na natin. Or hindi. Mas maganda kasi kung naiintindihan natin. So, dito rin, entity received a grant of 40 million from American government for the construction of laboratory and research facility. The cost of 50 million and estimated useful life 20 years. Din. Debit cash 40 million na receive natin from American government. So, assume natin na nagawa na yung laboratory and research facility, debit building 50 million, credit cash 50 million. Tapos yung depreciation din, and then 50 million na amount ng building divided by 20 years is equal to 2,500,000. So para makuha rin yung grant income na mara-recognize natin, ganun din, 40 million divided by 20 is equal to 2 million. Bilisan na lang natin. So number 3, an entity is granted a large tract of land in Cordillera by the Philippine government. The fair value of land is 50 million. The grant requires that that the entity shall construct a factory and employ only personnel residing in the Cordillera. The cost of the factory is 80 million with useful life 25 years. So yun din. Debit land, 50 million yung nakuha natin. Credit deferred grant income. Tapos assume natin na nagawa na yung building. Debit building, 80 million. Credit cash, 80 million. So depreciation, 80 million divided by 25 years is equal to 3,200,000. Debit depreciation, 3,200,000. Credit accumulated depreciation, 2,500,000. And yung income naman na mara-recognize natin for this year is ganun din. 50 million per value of land divided by 25 years is equal to 2 million. So debit deferred grant income, credit grant income. That's diba, masyado mong bilis. Binibilis natin yung example eh. Baka namang gets nyo na. Hihi. Sakto lang. Sakto lang po. So next, konting bagalan ko lang. Ay, meron pa pala. So ito, madali na lang to. Sino gusto sumagot na ito? An entity received a grant of 10 million from the Australian government to compensate for massive losses incurred because of recent earthquake. Tingin nyo anong entry dito? Immediate support. Anong entry? Natin. Sigot kayo. Debit cash. Yes, tama. Debit cash. Credit grant. Yes, tama po. I-recognize natin agad siya as income. So next, ito nga po yung tamang sagot. So next, repayment of grants na tayo. Ito na, palapit na tayo. Sa exciting part. Joke lang. Ito na. Repayment of grants. A government grant that becomes payable is treated as change in accounting estimate and counted for prospectively. So, repayment of grant, ibig sabihin, may mga situation kasi na may mga pagkakataon na nung na-receive mo yung grant is sa first year, oo, na-fulfill mo, may na-meet ka ng mga condition, pero pagdating ng ilang taon, hindi mo na na-meet yung condition na naka-attach dun sa grant. Kaya kailangan mo siyang bayaran ulit dun sa government. So, meron tayong dalawang paraan ng pagbayad. So, the repayment of grant related to income is deducted from the related deferred income balance, if any. Any excess is recognized immediately in profit or loss. So, one way ng pagbayad, kapag yung grant mo is related to income, di ba halimbawa, nag-credit tayo ng deferred grant income. Tapos nagde-debit din tayo ng deferred grant income. Nadadagdagan yung deferred grant income, nababawasan. So, kung ano yung matitira doon sa deferred grant income, yun yung ipapambayad mo dun sa penalty na pinatawag sa'yo ng government kasi nga hindi mo na fulfill yung mga condition nila. So, isa yung paraan. So, isa namang paraan, wait na. Ayan. Halimbawa, pag sumobra sa outstanding balance natin is 500,000 sa deferred income. Tapos ang babayaran natin is 1 million yung penalty natin na kailangan natin bayaran. Lugi yung kumpanya natin kasi nga, imbes na 500,000 lang nababayad natin, may dagdag pa tayo na expenses na 500,000 para sa 1 million na penalty na babayaran natin. Tapos halimbawa naman, kung yung outstanding balance ng deferred income natin is mas mataas sa babayaran natin, pwede pa tayong magkaroon ng gains doon kasi nga mas onting babayaran natin. So yung matitirang balance sa deferred income sa atin na yun. Parang income na natin yan. Parang ganun. So pangalawa namang way sa pagbayad ng grants or penalty natin, if related naman to asset, yun nga, pwede ring reduction sa deferred income or an increase in the carrying amount of the asset. So halimbawa nga, bibigyan tayong ng land if magbi-build tayo ng building doon. Tapos halimbawa, hindi nga natin na-fulfill yung ibang condition. So yung pangbayad natin sa penalty natin is idadagdag doon sa carrying amount ng asset. Parang ika-capitalize siya as cost nung asset na tinatayo natin. So the cumulative additional depreciation that would have been recognized in the absence of the grant is recognized immediately in profit or loss. So yung mga dapat na additional depreciation na mara-recognize sana natin, kaya nga lang, hindi natin natupad yung condition, may expense siya outright. Expense na agad siya, hindi na siya matuturing na depreciation. So, gets na ba? Gising pa ba kayo? Gising pa ba? Nagising pa kayo?
Gising pa.
Gising pa po. Thank you. So, bawal matulog. Tama, bawal matulog. Tapos, next naman po, presentation of government grants. Tama ba? Presentation of government grant. So, government grant related to assets shall be presented in the statement of financial position either of two ways. So, letter A, by setting the grant as deferred income. Yun nga, yung ginagawa natin kanina, yung nag-credit tayo ng deferred grant income. Utang natin siya. Or letter B, by deducting the grant in arriving at the carrying amount of the asset. So, makikita natin siya mamaya sa illustration. Sa next slide. Parang yung pagkatanggap mo ng grant, i-deduct mo siya dun sa carrying amount ng related asset na naka-attach dun sa grant na yon. So, number 2 muna. Government grant related to income is presented as follows. So, letter C, the grant is presented in the income statement either separately or under the general heading other income. So, kapag under related to income naman yung government grant, pwede mo siyang i-present as sa income statement na nandun siya, income siya, or pwede rin namang ilagay siya sa other income. Kasi halimbawa, manufacturing company kayo, ang mga binibenta nyo, mga product nyo, tapos ito masasama, bawal itong masama sa income nyo kasi nga government grant siya. So letter D, alternatively, the grant is deducted from the related expense. So, ito na, illustration natin, sinabi ko. At the beginning of the current year, an entity purchased an equipment for 5 million and received government grant of 500,000 to with respect to this asset. The equipment is depreciated on a straight line basis over 5 years. The residual value of the equipment is 200,000. So, meron tayong residual value dito. So, in deferred income approach, dito yan, sa related to asset, ito, letter A, deferred income approach, yun nga, i-recognize natin yung government grant as deferred grant income. So, debit equipment, 5 million. Credit, yung bibili muna tayo ng, di ba bumili tayo ng equipment para nga ma-receive natin yung government grant. So, debit equipment, 5 million. Credit cash, 5 million. So, yun nga, na-receive na natin yung government grant. Debit cash, 500,000. Credit deferred grant income, 500,000. So, for the depreciation, saan natin nakuha yung 960,000. So, yung equipment natin na 5 million, minus natin, meron tayong residual value dito, ima-minus natin tong 200,000. So, meron na lang tayong 4,800,000 divided by the useful life of 5 years is equal to 960,000. So, debit depreciation, 960,000. Credit accumulated depreciation, 160,000. So, yung mararecognize natin na income in proportion dun sa expense na incurred natin is, ganun din, ang 500,000 is i-divide natin sa 5 years. So, huwag tayong magtataka na bakit hindi natin minus yung 200,000 sa government grant na 500,000. Kasi itong 200,000, pertaining lang siya dun sa related asset na kailangan mong kuhaan ng depreciation. So, hindi ka siya kasama. So, 500,000 lang divided by 5. So, equal to 100,000. So, debit deferred grant income, 100,000. Credit grant income, 100,000. So, next approach naman. Ito mali rin to. Sabi ni Sir, deducted to. Deducted from asset approach. Ito yan. Sa related to asset. Deducting the grant and arriving at the carrying amount of the asset. So, deducted from asset approach or net presentation. So, ganun din yung illustration natin, 5 million. Equipment, debit equipment, 5 million. Credit cash, 5 million. Ang kaibahan nga lang, magtataka kayo, halimbawa, nandito na, natanggap na natin yung government grant, debit cash, 500,000. Pero sa iba natin siya kinredit. Diba nga sabi, i-deduct natin siya sa asset na related dun sa government grant na kinuha mo. So, i-credit natin si equipment as 500,000. So, mababawasan siya ng 500,000. Magiging 4,500,000 na lamang siya. So, yun yung sa deducted from asset approach. So, yung depreciation naman, saan natin nakuha yung 860,000. So, yun nga, yung 5 million natin na nabawasan ng 500,000 dahil nga hinredit natin para mabawasan yung dahil sa government grant natin. So, 4,500,000 na lamang siya. Divided by, dun sa useful fibers na 5 is equal to, ay mali, joke lang po. Wait lang. Mali. 5 million minus 500,000 minus the residual value of 200,000 pa divided by 5 is equal to 860,000. So, debit depreciation, 860,000. Credit accumulated depreciation, 860,000. So, yun yung pinagkaiba ng... So, wala tayong ma-recognize na income dito dahil una pa lang, wala na tayong na-recognize na utang natin na deferred income. So, wala tayong i-recognize na income kasi nga dinadak na natin agad siya sa equipment natin. Yun yung pinagkaiba ng deferred income approach from deducted from asset approach or gross presentation from net presentation. Gets ba? So, ba tayo? Okay. Next. Ay, saan ba tayo? So, ito naman yung presentation sa FS, sa financial statement. So, statement of financial position, ito yung gross presentation, ito yung net presentation. So, in gross presentation, no, may kita natin yung carrying amount, yung equipment natin na 5 million, less the accumulated depreciation na 960,000. Ang carrying amount ng equipment natin is 4,040,000. So, meron tayong liabilities na balance dito. Sa natin nung nakuha ang 400K. So, ito yan, 400, di ba? Nag-credit tayo ng utang, deferred grant income, 500,000. Pero, nabawasan siya dito nung nag-debit tayo para ma-record yung income natin. So, 500,000 minus 100,000 is equal to 400,000 na utang pa natin. Meron pa tayong utang na 400K. So, dyan yun sa gross presentation. Ang kaiba naman dito sa net presentation, may kita natin na yung equipment is 4,500,000 na lang dahil nga binadak agad natin siya dito nung nakuha natin yung grant, yung government grant. So, 4 million minus yung 860,000 na depreciation, ang carrying amount na lang ng equipment natin is 3,640,000. So, sa net presentation, wala tayong maipapakita na liabilities kasi nga, sa una pa lang, wala naman tayong ni-recognize or ni-record na liabilities natin dahil dinadak nga natin ulit-ulit sa ating equipment nung na-receive natin yung government grant. So, sa statement naman ng comprehensive income, yung gross presentation, yun din. Meron tayong na-recognize na 100,000 pala. Ito, 100,000. Minus yung depreciation expense natin na 160,000. So, ang loss natin is 860,000. Yun yung sa gross presentation. Then, sa net presentation naman, wala tayong mara-recognize na income dahil nga sa una pa lang, wala naman tayong na-recognize na utang at wala tayong may recognize na income. So, yun. Yung depreciation expense lang mara-record natin, which is 860,000. So, next na. Palapit na po tayo. Malapit na. Ayun yan. Ito, inom na ako tubig. Gets ba ba? Type 1. Type 1 kung nag-gets pa. Grabe yun ah. Salamat. Salamat po. Salamat po kung nag-gets nyo pa. Sana may natutunan kayo sa akin. So next, government assistance. Action by the government designed to provide an economic benefit specific to an entity or range of entities qualifying under certain criteria. The essence of government assistance is that no value can reasonably be placed upon it. So, ang government assistance naman is magkaiba sila ng government grant. Kasi ang government grant, may value siya. Halimbawa na nga lang no cash na natatanggap natin, monetary. Tapos pag non-monetary items naman, meron tayong fair value amount. So, sa government assistance, wala siyang value. No absolute amount of value or money na binibigay ng government. It's a matter of assistance in terms of service lang and any other benefits with no value talaga. So, example natin, free technical or marketing advice. Ito yung mga, halimbawa, training na provided by the government to the startup businesses or startup na mga businessman or women. Free to na binibigay ng government. So, wala siyang pera as in training lang talaga. So number 2, provision of guarantee. So ito naman yung halimbawa, ang isang entity mangungutang siya sa bangko. So ang government ang parang magiging guarantor niya para makautang siya dun sa bangko na yon. Yun yung provision of guarantee. To be considered as government assistance. So number 3, government procurement policy that is responsible for a portion of the entity's sales. So ito naman, gagamitin ko na example ni Sir dun sa recorded video niya. So yung government procurement policy, ito yung meron kayong isang entity, meron silang transaction sa government na halimbawa, itong product nyo is bibilihin ng government na meron kayong pag-uusap na dalawa lang. Tapos, halimbawa, sa bakuna, yun nga, yung government is pinili yung product nyo at meron siyang binigay na specific na polisiya na kayo lang dalawa yung meron nun. Pag may mga ganong transactions or situations, ako considered yun as government assistance. Yung tatlong yan, tandaan nyo lang, familiarize nyo lang. So yung government assistance does not include, so meron rin tayong tatlo. Number 1, infrastructure in development areas such as improvement to the general transport and communication network. So yung mga ganito, pang development areas, pang lahatan kasi to. And di ba ang sabi dito sa government assistance, specific to an entity lang or range of entities. So yun nga, dito ini-include as government assistance. Number 2, imposition of trading constraints on competitors. Ito naman, yung ginagawa ng government kasi to, parang nag-i-impose siya ng constraints, halimbawa sa mga foreign companies na halimbawa hindi nila pwedeng gawin to sa Pilipinas. Para yung mga local businesses natin is yun yung yun yung magbe-benefit, yung mga local businesses natin. So pag ginawa yun ng government, pag nagbigay siya ng mga trading constraints sa foreign businesses, hindi yun matuturing na government assistance. Kasi parang parang nasa trabaho yun ng government. Number 3, improve facilities such as irrigation for the benefit of an entire local community. So ito naman, improve facilities, irrigation for the benefit of an entire local community. So tandaan nyo lang, kasi nga dahil nga, kapag government assistance is specific lang to an entity, dito, entire local community. So, lagi nating tandaan na kapag yung benefit, yung magbe-benefit sa assistance na yan is public or maraming tao yung magbe-benefit, ibig sabihin nun, hindi siya kabilang sa government assistance. Hindi siya makakonsider na government assistance. Okay lang. Ito na, patapos na po. Last topic. So, disclosures about government grant. So, ito yung mga needed informations na kailangan natin i-disclose sa notes to financial statements. So, letter A, the accounting policy adopted for government grant, including the method of presentation adopted in financial statements. So, information, yung polisiya kung paano tinatrato yung government grant sa isang entity na yun, kailangan i-disclose nila yung about doon, yung policy na ginagamit nila. Or yung method ng presentation adopted in the financial statements, either yung gross presentation or net presentation, i-disclose nila yan doon. So next, the nature and extent of government grant recognized in the financial statements and an indication of other forms of government assistance from which the entity has directly benefited. So yung nature naman, i-disclose din ng entity about sa government grant, kung na-receive nilang government grant is cash, kung kailangan ba mag-incur na expense from time to time, if kailangan ba mag-acquire or mag-construct ng asset, if non-depreciable ba yung asset na binigay sa'yo or depreciable asset. Yun, yung mga kailangan mong i-disclose about sa government grant. So letter C, unfulfilled conditions and other contingencies attaching to government grants that has been recognized. So dito naman, kailangan mo rin i-disclose, halimbawa ngayon dito, sa repayment of grants, diba may mga unfulfilled ka na mga conditions sa government grant na binigay sa'yo, i-disclose mo rin siya dito. Need mo rin siyang i-disclose sa notes to financial statements na naka-attach. Ano pa yung mga, halimbawa, ano nga yung mga hindi mo na-fulfill, ano yung mga condition, anong nangyayari kung bakit mo hindi na-fulfill yon, anong mga kakaharapin mong kondisyon, magkakaroon ka ba ng penalty, churut, ganun. So, yun na nga. Note, note, it is not required to disclose the name of the government agency that gave the grant along with the date of sanction of the grant by such government agency and the date when cash is received in case of monetary grant. So, hindi na need i-disclose yung about sa name or kung kailan na-receive yung government grant. Hindi na kailangan sabihin kung sino, saan, kung kailan mo na-receive yung grant, government grant. Kasi parang for confidentiality purposes na rin and we don't need to be specific about sa mga bagay na yan. So, yun lang. Ay, hindi, meron pa. Ito na, review question na lang. Box ba? Buhay pa ba kaya? type 2 kung buhay pa, type 2. Buhay pa ba? Ay, buhay pa. Salamat po. Padrip pa, Rusi. So, ito na nga. Review question. Sinong gustong sumagot? Government grant shall be recognized when there is reasonable assurance that. So, kailan daw nare-recognize ang isang government grant? So, type nyo lang kung anong answer nyo. So, kaya, ano kayang sagot? Letter C. Letter C, letter C, letter C. Yan, tama po. Tamang letter C. So, mare-recognize ang government grant kung ang entity ay magko-comply sa condition na naka-attach sa grant at sigurado natin na yung grant is marireceive ng entity. So, letter C ang sagot dito. So, next, this government grant whose primary condition is that an entity shall purchase or construct an asset. So, ito naman daw yung government grant na kailangan nating mag-purchase, mag-acquire, or mag-construct ng asset or normally long-term assets yung kailangan nating i-purchase. So, anong sagot? Yes, tama po. Letter A. Grant related to asset. So, next, government grant related to depreciable asset is usually recognized as income. Ang sagot dyan, letter A, immediately over the useful life of the asset using straight line method, using declining method, or over the useful life of the asset in proportion to the depreciation of the asset. Ang sagot natin, DA. Uy, nagkakaiba na kayo ng sagot. Ang tamang sagot po dyan ay letter D. Letter D po. Letter D, over the useful life of the asset and in proportion to the depreciation of the asset. Diba, halimbawa nga, sa depreciable asset, pag mara-recognize siya, in proportion dun sa kung paano mo siya makukuha. Kung paano mo makukuha yung depreciation ng related asset. So, letter D siya. Kasi pag sinabi mo immediately, mara-recognize mo siya. But sa ano lang yan, sa government grant income na financial aid sa mga calamities. So next question. Which of the following is not an example of government assistance? So anong sagot nyo? Hindi daw example ng government assistance. So, tamang sagot. Wait lang. Okay. Tamang sagot, letter D. Tama. A and B, provision of infrastructure in developing areas. Kasi yung free technical advice, alam na natin na ano yan, government assistance yan. So ito ngayon na-explain ko kaninang dalawa na hindi kabilang sa government assistance itong developing areas in imposition of trading constraints. So next, ito last na to. Which of the following statement is correct? Statement number 1, the repayment of grant related to an asset shall be recorded by increasing the carrying amount of the asset. Statement number 2, the cumulative additional depreciation that would be recognized in the absence of the grant is recognized immediately. Sagot nyo. Iba po, anong try ng iba? Ano sa tingin ng iba? Ayun nyo, ay sumagot. Joke lang. Ayan, C. So yes, ang tamang sagot po dyan ay letter C. Both statements are correct. Kasi nga, the repayment of grant related to an asset shall be recorded by increasing the carrying amount of the asset. Pag babayaran mo daw yung penalty mo na yung grant is related to an asset, i-increase mo yung carrying amount ng asset. Kaya nang nasabi ko dito. So, may ang haba pala. So, increase in the carrying amount of the asset, pagbabayaran mo yung penalty mo. So, isunod naman, the cumulative additional depreciation that would be recognized in the absence of the grant is recognized immediately. Dito yun. Ano yan? The cumulative additional, yun nga, i-expense outright siya. Hindi na siya ma-recognize as depreciation. Ayun na po. And sana natutunan niyo. Thank you. Thank you po.
Okay, walang pahingan. Diretso tayo sa past 23. Wait lang. Past 23 borrowing cost. So, definition of borrowing cost po ay yung mga defined as interest and other costs that an entity incurs in connection with borrowing of funds. So, kapag mayroon pong borrowing na nangyayari tapos may mga additional na cost, yung mga additional cost na po yun yung tinatawag na borrowing cost. And borrowing costs specifically include interest expense calculated using the effective interest method, finance charge, exchange difference arising from foreign currency. Next, accounting for borrowing cost. Kapag daw po yung borrowing cost is directly attributable sa acquisition po or sa construction po ng isang asset, ilalagay po siya, capitalize po siya as cost of assets. For example, yung gumawa ka po ng isang building and you have borrowing cost po doon. Yung borrowing cost na po doon, ilalagay niyo po siya i-add niyo po siya sa cost ng building. So, kapag daw po yung borrowing is not directly attributable, gagawin daw po siyang, i-record po siya as expense. So, capitalization of borrowing cost starts when all the conditions are met. So, ito po yung mga conditions. Expenditures for the asset, borrowing costs are incurred, and the activities necessary to prepare the asset ay undergoing pa. So, meron po tayo mga qualifying asset, and ito po yung mga examples. Ay, wait lang, define ko pala. Yung mga qualifying asset po, ito po yung mga asset na nagtitake po ng matagal na oras bago po maging ready or bago po siya pwedeng ibenta. So, yung mga examples are manufacturing plant, and ano po yun, yung mga warehouse na ginagawa ng mga product, power generation facility, intangible asset, and investment property. So, excluded daw po sa capitalization yung mga borrowing cost na mga, halimbawa po, ayun po, yung asset na measured na fair value such as biological asset. Dahil kapag, ano po siya hindi po siya katulad ng ibang intangible asset na matagal pong bago, may sarili pong depreciation. Kasi po, di ba yung biological asset, mali mo po, next year, nagpo-produce pa po siya ng mga bearing fruits, tapos next year, hindi na po ganun. So, ito po yung mga additional pointers. Hindi ko na po patatagalin. Basahin nyo na lang po. So, ito po. Meron po two classifications ng borrowing, which is specific and general. So, easy lang po yung specific para po makita. Ito po yung nanghiram ka po ng fund para po ma-obtain yung certain asset. Ganun na po kasimple. And para po makuha yung capitalizable borrowing cost, tignan nyo na lang po sa inyong screen, actual borrowing cost minus investment income. Ganun lang po siya kadali. So, sa general borrowing naman po, funds borrowed for more than one purpose. Kung sa specific borrowing, nanghiram po tayo ng fund para ma-acquire ang isang certain asset, general borrowing po, ito po yung may different uses. So, in getting po, yung capitalizable borrowing cost under general borrowing is yung average expenditures po natin, i-multiply natin sa capitalization rate. So, para po makuha natin yung capitalization rate, yung total annual borrowing cost po natin, divide sa total general borrowing outstanding during period. So, mamaya alin ko po yan para mas madaling ma-appreciate sa example. So, ito po, specific borrowing. So, ang sabi po dito, actual borrowing cost minus investment income. Sino pong pwede magsagot nito? Type nyo na lang po pala. So, yung isang entity daw po nag-loan ng 4 million pesos na mayroon pong 10% interest rate. Specifically para po sa construction ng new building. So, may specific po na purpose, ay may iisang purpose lang po siya. So, kaya po siya naging specific borrowing. So, total borrowing cost incurred amounted to 250,000 for the current year. Prior to disbursement, yes. Tama po si Ms. Rhea, 250,000 minus 40,000 equals 210,000. Bakit po? Ayan. Ano siya? Bakit po? Ang sabi po dito, actual borrowing cost minus investment income. Yung 250,000 na po siya na yun, ayun po yung actual borrowing cost. So, prior to disbursement, the proceeds of borrowing were temporarily invested. Kasi yung mga natira daw po ay ininvest at meron pong nakuhang 40,000 na interest income. Ngayon po, i-deduct po natin yung interest income na yon sa borrowing cost. Kaya po natin nakuha yung 210,000. So, next. Ano ba to? So, eto po. Ganito, parang pabaliktad naman po yung ginawa dito. Binigay po yung... Ay, wait lang, mali. Wait lang. So, ito po. So, ganun pa rin po yung ginawa kanina, no? Yung actual borrowing cost minus interest income. Kaso, minultiply po dito sa 11/12. Bakit? Noong January 1 po, nanghiram po tayo ng 6 million para po sa electricity generating plant. Kaso, yung project po ay nakompleto noong November 30. Ibig sabihin, hindi po siya tumakbo ng 12 months, ay ng isang buong taon. 11 months lang po siya. So, be mindful lang po tayo sa date kung kailan po nakompleto yung project. So, para po makuha na natin yung actual borrowing cost, yung 6 million po, i-multiply natin sa 10% kasi annual cost po siya, no? So, magiging 600,000. So, yung 600,000 po na yon na supposedly for 1 year, i-multiply po natin sa 11/12 dahil 11 months lang po tumakbo yung project hanggang sa makompleto po yung electricity generating plant, which is 550,000. So, i-minus po natin yung interest income kasi nga po, in-invest po ulit yung mga natirang cash na nakaproduce ng 80,000. So, kaya po naging 470,000. So, kung sa cost of building naman po ang hahanapin, dahil nga po directly attributable cost po yung ibang borrowing cost, i-add po natin yung capitalizable borrowing cost sa cost of building, which is 6,470,000 at the end. So, balik po tayo sa general borrowing. So, ito po yung mga gagawin, no? Average expenditures times capitalization rate. So, dito po, borrowings below were made for general purposes. So, meron po multiple purposes. And yung mga proceeds po ay ginamit para sa finance ng construction of any building. So, yung una nating binaro na 3 million, meron po 300,000 borrowing cost. Ito po naman, 180,000 na borrowing cost. Ito po, ay 3 na sa pangatlo ay may 280,000 na borrowing cost. So, the construction of the building was started on January 1 and completed on December 31. So, hindi na po natin kailangan i-multiply ng 11/12 kung ilang month kasi buong taon po siya. So, January 1, 400,000, March 31, 1 million. So, anong hinahanap po natin is capitalizable borrowing cost, carrying amount ng building, and interest expense or finance charge. So, to get the capitalizable borrowing cost, we need to multiply the total cost of expenditures kung gaano po katagal yung itinakbo niya. Yung January 1 po, meron tayong 400,000 expenditure and yung fraction 12/12. Bakit po siya 12/12? So, tumakbo po yung expenditures na to simula January hanggang sa makompleto po yung project. So, January hanggang December, which is 12 months, saka po natin i-divide 12 months dahil 12 months naman sa isang taon, makakakuha po tayo ng 400,000 total cost. And next date is March 31. So, 1 million times 9/12. Ang March 31, bakit siya naging 9/12? Kasi po, March 31 na po nagsimula March 31 po na yung expenditure na 1 million. Kaya po naging 9 months. Pero po, kung March 1 yan, magiging 10/12 po to. Kasi po, end of the month na po siya na record eh. Kaya po naging 9/12. So, April, May, June hanggang December is 9 months/12. So, makakuha pa tayong ganito. Same din po sa mga susunod na given. So, ang total amount po na to ay na total average expenditures po natin is 2 million. So, masabi po dito kanina, average expenditure times capitalization rate. So, para po makuha natin capitalization rate, total annual borrowing cost plus total general borrowing outstanding during the period. So, ito po. Saan po natin nakuha yung 760,000 na to? Dito po siya. Pinag-add po yung lahat ng borrowing cost. 300,000 plus 180,000 plus 280,000 equals 760,000 divided by 8 million po. Saan naman po nakuha yung 8 million na yan? Dito po, sa buong principal. So, 3 million plus 1.5 million plus 3.5 million equals 8 million. Tama po ba? So, doon po natin makukuha yung capitalization rate. So, yung total amount po na average expenditures, multiply lang po natin sa 9.5 na rate, which is 190,000. Ayun na po yung capitalizable borrowing cost. So, para po makuha natin yung cost ng building, madali lang po, i-add lang po natin yung capitalizable borrowing cost doon sa incurred cost for building. So, paano po natin nakuha dito? Incurred cost ng building, wala pong binigay. Lahat po ng expenses na nandito, i-add lang po natin para makuha po natin yung cost ng building. Kasi po, no January 1, gumastos ng 400,000, March 31, 1 million, and so on and so forth. So, actual borrowing cost minus capitalizable borrowing cost, makukuha po natin yung interest expense. So, yung 760,000, yun po yung pinag-add natin lahat ng borrowing cost. And yung capitalizable borrowing cost, ito po yun. Yung pinag-multiply na po natin yung average expenditure sa dito, capitalization. Okay. Next, pinagsama na, no? Hindi pa nakontento yung mga accountant. Pinagsama pa talaga. So, an entity borrowed 1.5 million at an interest of 10% specifically. So, meron po tayong binarrow na 1.5 million at ang interest rate is 10% at specific po siya. So, tapos yung actual borrowing cost po is 150,000. Meron din po tayong outstanding na 8% general borrowing of 7 million. So, para po makuha na, ang hinahanap po natin is capitalizable borrowing cost, carrying amount of building, and interest expense. Muli. So, para po makuha natin yung average expenditure, katulad lang po ng ginawa natin kanina, kung gaano po nagtagal yung month, halimbawa January, tapos December po na tapos. Kung ilang month po na takbo, yun po yung ilalagay natin sa fraction. So, ayun, nakalagay po dito, 500, 760, 1,500,000. So, in total po na average expenditure natin is 2,750,000. Now, ang nakalagay po dito is ibabawas natin yung specific borrowing na 1.5 million para po makuha natin yung applicable na amount for general borrowing. Hindi ko po alam kung bakit po ibabawas, pero sinusunod ko lang po yung nakalagay kasi sa PPT at sa tinuro ni sir. So, para po makuha natin yung capitalizable borrowing cost, sa specific borrowing, yung 10%, imumultiply lang po natin sa cost. Sa original na capital na hiniram natin, which is 150,000. Yung general borrowing naman po, i-multiply natin sa 8% at dito, yung 8% sa applicable na cost for general borrowing, which is 100,000. At i-add lang po natin para makuha po natin yung total capitalizable borrowing cost. So, nakuha na po natin yung unang hinahanap, which is capitalizable borrowing cost na 250,000. So, para po kuha natin ulit yung carrying amount na kung ano man yung binild natin, i-add lang po natin yung capitalizable borrowing costs dun sa incurred cost. So, saan po ulit nakuha incurred cost ng building? Dito po siya sa expenditures. kung ito po yung sa mga month, yung mga amount na yun, pinag-add lang po. And para makuha ulit ang interest expense, yung actual borrowing cost natin na 150,000, yung sa specific borrowing, i-add lang po natin yung tawag dito, yung product ng rate na 8% at yung original na 7 million na binarrow natin for general borrowing, which is 710,000 minus capitalizable borrowing cost kanina na 250,000, makukuha natin interest expense na 460,000. So, ayun po. Pasensya na, mabilis. The amount of borrowing cost capitalizable during the period. Ito po yung mga kailangan na i-disclose daw na related sa borrowing cost. The capitalization rate used to determine the amount of borrowing cost eligible for capitalization. So, kailangan po i-disclose natin yung amount ng borrowing cost during the period at yung rate na ginamit. So, segregation of assets that are qualifying asset from the other asset in the statement of financial position is not required to be disclosed. So, yung segregation of assets na po yan, hindi daw po required i-disclose. So, ito na. Tapos na rin tayo. Ano pong, pakitype na lang po sa chat box kung ano po yung sagot niya. Borrowing cost can be capitalized when? So, bakit daw? Dito. Kakapitalize. Kailan daw po i-capitalize? Kung qualifying asset daw po ba yung asset or the asset is a qualifying asset and it is not probable that the borrowing cost will result in future economic benefits? C or D? Ano pong sagot? Yes po, letter D. Kasi po, wait naman. So, ayun po. Kaya po letter D, kasi po, yung borrowing cost na po yun na idadagdag natin sa asset ay magpaproduce po ng future economic benefit at can be measured reliably. So, hindi po tayo pwede magdagdag ng cost. Hindi po tayo pwede mag-capitalize ng cost kung hindi po natin alam yung value nito. So, next, if the qualifying asset is financed by general borrowing, the capitalizable borrowing cost is equal to, pakatype na lang po ulit. So, ano po ang inyong sagot? So, hindi ko po natandaan to eh. So, balik po tayo dun sa PPT. Ang hinahanap po natin is capitalizable borrowing cost under general borrowing. So, para makuha daw is average expenditures multiply capitalization rate. So, ang sagot po dito is total, ano yun? Average expenditure multiplied by capitalization rate, whichever is lower. Lower ba? Sorry, dito. Hindi ako makakapagbigay pala dito ng exact na ano. So, sabi po nila, letter C or D, ang average expenditure daw po eh, tapos capitalization. Hindi ko na po matandaan kung lower ba o higher yung sinabi ni sir. So, proceed na lang po muna tayo. Pasensya na. Which of the following is not a condition that must be satisfied? So, ano do yung mga condition na hindi okay lang kahit hindi na-satisfied? Para interest capitalization, magsimula yung interest capitalization sa qualifying asset. So, A, B, or C, or D. Okay, medyo gabi na rin. So, ang tamang sagot po dyan is the letter C. Hindi po yan kailangan para masimula po yung interest capitalization sa qualifying asset. Ayun, sabi po ni Miss Rosie, kung ano daw po yung lower, whichever is lower. So, ang sagot daw po dito is letter C. Ang sabi niya po is kung sino daw mas mababa sa capitalizable borrowing cost at actual borrowing, yun daw po yung i-consider. So, thank you po, Miss Rosie. So, dito rin po, letter C rin. Okay, ito. The period of time during which interest must be capitalized ends when the asset is substantially complete and ready for intended use. No further interest is incurred. A, B, C, or D? Yes po, letter A. Kasi po, bakit po? The asset is substantially complete and ready for intended use. So, kompleto na po yung asset. So, bakit ka po magdadagdag pa ng cost? Tama po ba? So, ayun po. Next. Yun. Which is not a disclosure requirement. So, ano daw po yung mga sinabi ko po yan kanina. Sinabi. Nasa pipit po yan, bandang dulo. Pakatip na lang po sa chat box. Last na to. Yes, letter C po. Kung babalik po tayo sa PPT, nakalagay po doon, hindi daw po required yung, segregation of assets, the qualifying asset is not required to be disclosed. So, ayun lang po. End of presentation. So, ayun. Tapos, good luck po sa finals. Yun lang po. Thank you for your participation and good night.
Thank you po. Good luck
Thank
po
you
sa
po.
finals.
Good luck sa finals.